The night was cold and restless. Dark clouds rolled across the Kansas sky, swallowing the moonlight. The sound of distant thunder echoed over the open fields, and heavy rain began to fall, turning the dirt roads into rivers of mud. Inside a small farmhouse, Jacob Miller sat by the fireplace, half asleep in his chair. His faithful dog, Rusty, lay snoring near his boots. It had been a long day of work, mending fences, hauling feed, and checking the cornfields before the storm hit. The old wall clock struck midnight, and Jacob was about to head to bed when a sudden noise broke the quiet.
Cluck, cluck!
Screech. The chickens were going wild. Jacob frowned. "What in the world?" he muttered, grabbing his flashlight and raincoat. Rusty barked once, alert and ready. "Come on, boy," Jacob said, stepping out into the storm. The wind slapped his face, and rain soaked his jacket within seconds. The flashlight beam danced through the darkness as he crossed the yard toward the chicken coop. He could hear the frantic flapping of wings and the panicked cries of his hens. It wasn't normal, not for a raccoon, not even for a coyote. "Easy there, girls," Jacob called out, his voice barely heard over the storm. "I'm coming." When he reached the coop, the door was half open, the latch hanging loose. He tightened his grip on the flashlight and slowly pushed it open. The beam of light swept across the straw-covered floor and stopped. Something moved in the shadows. Jacob froze. For a second, he thought it might be a person, maybe a thief seeking shelter, but then he saw her. She was crouched in the corner, her body wrapped protectively around something small. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, a soft silver blue like moonlight on water. Her eyes reflected the beam, glowing faintly gold. In her arms was a tiny figure, no bigger than a toddler, wrapped in a torn metallic blanket. The small child whimpered softly. Jacob's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced. It can't be. The figure lifted her head, her eyes filled with fear. Her voice was quiet, shaky, and uncertain, as if she struggled with every word. "We just needed shelter from the rain." For a moment, Jacob stood frozen, unable to move or think. His heart pounded in his chest. The sight didn't fit any logic he knew. This was no human woman. Her face was gentle but different. Her skin seemed almost translucent, veins faintly glowing like soft light under glass. Her hair, if it could be called that, flowed like thin strands of silver silk. Rusty growled softly, unsure of what to make of her. Jacob quickly raised a hand. "Easy, boy," he said. The woman, no, the being, didn't move. She only pulled the small child closer, whispering something in a strange language. Jacob slowly lowered his flashlight. "You're not from around here, are you?" he said quietly, almost to himself. The woman didn't reply, only looked at him with pleading eyes. Her child shivered in her arms, their small body shaking. Jacob sighed. "You can't stay out here. You'll freeze." Still cautious, he gestured toward his house. Come on. "I won't hurt you, just don't do anything foolish," she hesitated. Her glowing eyes studied him, perhaps trying to read his intentions. Then after a long moment she nodded once, slowly, and stood. Jacob noticed how weak she looked. Her legs trembled and one arm hung limp at her side. She must have been injured. The child stirred, coughing softly. Without another word, Jacob led them through the rain toward his farmhouse. Inside, the fire still burned low, filling the room with warm light. Rusty stayed near the door, watching cautiously. Jacob fetched a blanket and placed it by the fire. "Sit," he said gently. The woman obeyed, lowering herself carefully to the floor. The small child stayed in her lap, wrapped tightly. Up close, Jacob could see just how different, and yet familiar, she looked. Her eyes were large and expressive, her face delicate but weary, like someone who had been running for a long time. The faint glow from her skin dimmed as she warmed by the fire. Jacob handed her a cup of water. She looked at it uncertainly at first, then took it with both hands, murmuring something that sounded like thanks. The child peered up at Jacob with curious golden eyes before hiding their face again in the blanket. "What's your name?" Jacob asked softly. The woman hesitated. "Lyra," she finally said. The name came out clear but accented. Strange, musical. "Lyra," Jacob repeated, testing the sound. "And the little one?" She looked down and smiled faintly. "Saren," Jacob nodded. "All right, Lyra and Saren, I'm Jacob." She looked at him, confusion flickering in her eyes as if the name was foreign to her tongue. But she tried to repeat it anyway. "Jacob," Jacob chuckled softly. Close enough. He noticed then that the child's blanket was damp and torn. The material wasn't like anything he'd ever seen, lightweight, metallic, but soft. He fetched one of his own wool blankets and offered it to her. Here, use this. It's warmer. Lyra hesitated, then accepted it with a slow nod. Thank you. Her English was halting, but clear enough. As the fire crackled, Jacob sat across from them, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. An alien right here in his home. It sounded ridiculous, impossible. But the proof was right in front of him, staring back with golden eyes. After a while, Lyra spoke again. We not mean harm, we lost, Jacob frowned. Lost from where? She looked toward the window where the storm still raged. From above, she pointed to the sky. Ship broken. Many gone. Jacob felt a chill, not from the cold, but from her words. You crashed? Lyra nodded slowly. Hunted. Bad ones find us. We run hide. Her voice trembled slightly. Only Saren left. Others gone. Jacob didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure if he believed her, but he couldn't deny what he saw. Her fear was real. Her exhaustion was real. And the way she held that child, it was the same as any mother protecting her own. You're safe here, he finally said. No one's going to hurt you. Lyra looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to understand the meaning of those words. Then very quietly she whispered, Humans. Kind? Jacob smiled faintly. Some of us try to be. Hours passed. The storm outside began to fade. Jacob gave them some bread and soup, plain but warm. Lyra didn't eat much, but made sure her child did. Watching her carefully spoon the food to Saren reminded Jacob of his late wife and their son, years ago. The memory ached, but in a strange way it comforted him too. After Saren fell asleep, Lyra sat quietly staring into the fire. You have family? She asked in her broken English. Jacob hesitated. Had. Long time ago. She nodded slowly, as if understanding loss all too well. Then she touched the strange pendant around her neck. A small, glowing crystal, dim now, but still pulsing faintly. This home, she said softly. What left of it? Jacob watched her with quiet respect. Whatever her story was, it was filled with pain. The rain had stopped when Jacob finally spoke again. You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next. Lyra looked uncertain. You not tell others? Jacob shook his head. Not a word. Folks around here wouldn't understand. For the first time, Lyra's expression softened. You help. Stranger, why? Jacob looked into the fire. Because you needed help. And because I couldn't sleep tonight if I didn't. For a moment, silence filled the room, soft, peaceful silence. The kind that needed no words. Lyra looked down at her sleeping child, then back at Jacob. Thank you, she whispered. Jacob smiled faintly. Get some rest. You'll need it. When dawn broke, pale sunlight filled the small farmhouse. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and still. Jacob stepped outside to check the damage to the coop. Broken boards, scattered feathers, a real mess. But somehow he didn't care. Inside, Lyra and Saren still slept by the fire. For the first time, they looked peaceful. Jacob stood at the doorway, watching quietly. The rising sun reflected softly off Lyra's silver-blue skin. She looked almost human in that light. He didn't know what the coming days would bring, whether others would come searching for her, whether danger would follow. But for now, one thing was certain. He had made a promise to protect them, and Jacob Miller was a man who kept his promises. Outside, the sky cleared, revealing a bright, endless blue. The storm was gone, but for Jacob, a new kind of storm was just beginning. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, filling the small farmhouse with a gentle warmth. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air as Jacob Miller stirred his cup, still trying to believe the events of the previous night, an alien mother and her child, right here, sleeping near his fireplace. If someone had told him this yesterday, he would have laughed them off. But now, as he glanced at the pair curled up under his old quilt, there was no denying it. They were real. Lyra and her little one, Saren, were still asleep. Saren's breathing was soft and steady, and Lyra's arm was protectively wrapped around him, her glowing skin now faint and dim. The faint hum from her pendant had quieted as if it too was resting. Jacob smiled faintly. Guess aliens get tired too, he murmured. He turned back to his coffee, staring out the window at the soaked fields. The storm had passed, but the world outside still looked heavy and gray. He had work to do, repairs, cleanup, but his mind kept drifting back to the strange visitors in his home. When Lyra finally stirred, she blinked in confusion for a moment, her golden eyes adjusting to the daylight. Then she saw Jacob at the table and tensed slightly, as if uncertain where she was. "Morning," Jacob said gently. "You're safe." "No one came." Lyra nodded slowly. "Storm gone?" Jacob smiled. "Yeah, sky's clear now." Saren yawned, rubbing his small glowing eyes. He looked around, then smiled when he saw the old dog, Rusty, dozing by the door. The little alien reached a hand toward him. Rusty lifted his head, sniffed the air, then wagged his tail cautiously. Jacob chuckled. "Well, look at that. Rusty likes you, kid." Lyra tilted her head. "He not afraid?" Jacob shrugged. "He's seen worse. He once tried to chase a bull. Didn't go well." Lyra didn't understand all his words, but she smiled softly. Jacob placed some food on the table, bread, eggs, and a bit of jam. "You should eat something," he said. "Long night." Lyra hesitated before approaching the table. She sat carefully, as if unsure how to act in a human home. When she took a small bite of bread, her eyes widened slightly. "Warm," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Yeah," Jacob replied with a grin. "Not much, but it'll do." Saren nibbled curiously at a piece of bread Jacob handed him. His little face lit up. Jacob laughed. "Guess that's the first time he's had toast." Lyra looked at Jacob then, her eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. Trust, perhaps. "You help." "You kind," she said softly. Jacob looked away, slightly embarrassed, just doing what anyone would, but deep down he knew not everyone would have done the same. Most folks around here would have called the authorities the moment they saw her, and if the government got involved, he didn't even want to think about what would happen to Lyra and her child. As the morning went on, Jacob fixed the broken coop and cleaned up the yard. Lyra watched him from the porch, holding Saren close. Every sound of the tractor or rustling leaves made her flinch. Jacob noticed. "You're still scared," he said gently. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "They ain't looking." Jacob paused. "Who's they?" Lyra looked toward the horizon. "Hunters," Jacob frowned. "Hunters? From your world?" She nodded again. "They come find us. No mercy." Her voice trembled slightly. "We run many days, hide, then crash." She touched the small glowing pendant at her neck. "Ship gone. Friends gone. Only me and Saren." Jacob's hands tightened on the fence he was repairing. He didn't know what kind of monsters would chase a mother and child across the stars, but the fear in her voice was real. "So they're still out there?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra whispered. "They follow. They never stop." Jacob looked up at the sky, now bright and peaceful, but something in his gut twisted. He had seen enough storms to know when one was coming, and this one wasn't made of rain. That night, after Saren had fallen asleep, Lyra sat near the fire while Jacob cleaned his tools. The flickering light reflected in her golden eyes. "You not tell people?" she asked quietly. Jacob shook his head. "If I told anyone, they'd think I lost my mind. And if the government believed me, they'd take you away. They'd run tests, study you like animals." Lyra shivered. "That happened before. Long ago, my people. Watch from far. Never come close. Fear humans, fear. Your armies," Jacob sighed. "Can't blame them, I guess. We humans aren't always kind to what we don't understand." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "But you, different." Jacob smiled a little. "Maybe I just know what it's like to lose everything." Lyra tilted her head, curious. "You lost?" He stared into the fire. "My wife, cancer 10 years ago." His voice was soft, distant. "After that, I just kept working, fixing fences, growing corn, pretending the world still needed me." Lyra didn't understand every word, but she understood the sadness in his voice. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Jacob gave a small nod. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the crackle of the fire. Finally, Lyra spoke again. "Humans strong," she said slowly, searching for the right words. "You break but still stand," Jacob chuckled. "You're not wrong," she smiled faintly. "Maybe that is why I come here. To learn how to stand again." Her words struck him deeply. The next few days passed quietly. Jacob helped Lyra patch her torn clothing using some of his old fabric. He even built a small shelter under the barn, a hidden place where she and Saren could stay in case anyone came snooping. Lyra, in return, helped him fix broken tools with bits of strange technology she carried. One small device repaired a cracked water pipe in seconds. Jacob stared in awe. "Wish I had one of those 20 years ago," he joked. Lyra smiled. "Old human tools. Need care, not just fix." "You care," Jacob grinned. "You talk like my grandpa." They laughed softly, and for the first time, Lyra's laughter sounded like music, light, calm, and full of life. But peace never lasts forever. One evening, while Jacob was checking the field, he noticed a strange shimmer in the distance, like heat waves, though the air was cool. It flickered for a moment, then vanished. He frowned. "What the?" When he returned home, Lyra was pacing nervously by the door, holding Saren tightly. "They found us," she whispered. Jacob's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Lyra pointed toward the sky. "Scanner. Small drone." They closed. Jacob grabbed his old binoculars and ran outside. He scanned the horizon and saw it. A faint blue light moving silently, almost invisible, like a ghost in the air. "That's not human," he muttered. Lyra's voice trembled. "They send Small Eye first. Big ship follow." Jacob lowered the binoculars, his jaw set. "Then we'd better hide you." They moved quickly. Jacob led Lyra and Saren to the hidden space beneath the barn. He had built it years ago for storing grain, but now it would serve another purpose. "You stay here until I say it's safe," he said firmly. Lyra looked at him with fear in her eyes. "They see you help me. They hurt you." Jacob gave a small smile. "Let them try." He closed the hatch and moved back to the farmhouse, trying to act normal. Hours passed. The drone light came closer, scanning the field, hovering above the chicken coop. Rusty growled low, ready to bark, but Jacob hushed him. Finally, the light moved away, vanishing into the clouds. Jacob exhaled. "Looks like we're safe. For now." He hurried back to the barn and opened the hatch. Lyra was waiting, holding Saren close. "They gone?" "For now," Jacob said. "But I think they'll come back." Lyra's shoulders slumped. "We can't run forever." Jacob nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time to stop running." That night, as they sat by the fire once more, the air between them was heavy with unspoken worry. Lyra looked into the flames. "Hunters will return. They follow signal. They not stop until I..." "Gone," Jacob thought for a moment. "Can you stop the signal?" She touched her pendant. "Broken. Needs core. My ship had it." "Ship now far in forest," Jacob stood. "Then we'll find it." Lyra looked up sharply. "You help again? Why?" He smiled faintly. "Because that's what humans do. We fix what's broken. We protect what needs protecting." For a long moment, Lyra just stared at him, this simple farmer standing in his worn boots and dusty shirt, ready to face danger for someone from another world. Finally, she whispered, "Maybe humans." "Not what my people think," Jacob chuckled. "You'd be surprised." Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant but real. A new storm was coming. Not of rain, but of something far greater. And Jacob Miller knew that the quiet days on his farm were over. The next morning, the air was calm and heavy. The kind of silence that felt too quiet, as if the world was holding its breath. Jacob Miller stood on his porch, a mug of coffee in his hand. He stared at the blue sky, but his thoughts were far from peaceful. He hadn't slept much. Last night, he and Lyra had hidden from the strange drone that searched the fields. He could still remember the cold shimmer of blue light scanning the chicken coop. It had left eventually, but Jacob knew it wasn't over. Inside the house, Lyra sat near the window with her small son Saren in her lap. The child hummed softly, tracing patterns in the air with his glowing fingers. Lyra watched Jacob quietly, worry written all over her face. She could sense what he was thinking. Humans were loud in emotion, even when they tried to hide it, and Jacob was afraid not for himself but for her and Saren. Jacob turned when he felt her eyes on him. "You okay?" he asked. Lyra nodded slowly. "For now." She looked out at the sky. "They come soon." Jacob didn't want to believe that. But deep down he knew she was right. That afternoon, Jacob prepared. He didn't know much about alien technology, but he knew how to defend his home. He filled the gas tank of his old truck, cleaned his shotgun, and checked the hidden shelter under the barn. Lyra watched him with confusion. You fight? She asked softly. Jacob gave a small grin. If someone comes to harm folks under my roof, yeah. That's the rule, Lyra frowned. They not like humans, stronger, more weapons. Jacob shrugged. Doesn't matter. I'll do what I can. He said it simply, like a man who had decided his path long before the fight even began. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Why, she asked. We not your people. Jacob leaned on his shovel and looked at her. You're a mother trying to protect her child. That's enough reason. Her eyes softened. You brave. Jacob smiled a little. Maybe just stubborn. As night approached, the wind picked up again. The clouds rolled in like dark ships across the sky. Rusty, the old dog, whined and paced near the door. He sensed something too, then it came. A low hum, deep, powerful, not from this world. The windows rattled. The chickens clucked nervously in the coop. Jacob stepped outside and looked up. A faint glow appeared in the clouds, growing brighter each second. Then the light split the sky, blue, sharp, and unnatural. A massive shadow moved above the clouds. They're here, Lyra whispered from behind him. Jacob's jaw tightened. Get to the barn now. He ran with her through the wind and rain that had begun to fall again. The hum grew louder. The air itself felt charged, buzzing with unseen energy. When they reached the barn, Lyra pulled Saren close, her pendant glowing faintly. They will scan. Hide under. Jacob lifted the trapdoor to the underground shelter. Go! Lyra hesitated. What about you? I'll stay, Jacob said. Someone's got to make sure they don't find you. Lyra grabbed his arm. If they see you, they hurt you. Jacob met her glowing eyes and smiled sadly. I've been through worse. He gently closed the hatch once they were safe below. Then he turned back to face the open field. The ship appeared seconds later, breaking through the clouds like a falling star. It was larger than Jacob's entire barn, dark and sharp-edged, glowing with blue lights that pulsed like veins. It hovered silently above the field, the air rumbling beneath it. A beam of light shot down from its center, scanning across the farm. The crops bent under the force of it. Jacob shielded his eyes as the beam passed over him, his heart pounding. Then, with a loud hiss, 3 tall figures descended from the light. They were covered in metallic armor, their eyes glowing cold white. Their movements were smooth, silent, and precise. Jacob stood his ground. Rusty barked furiously beside him. The lead alien stepped forward. Its voice echoed, metallic and hollow. Human, you harbor fugitives. Jacob didn't move. You've got no business here. The alien's head tilted. The mother and child are property of the Thalran Dominion. They must be returned. Jacob's grip tightened on his shotgun. She's not your property. She's a mother, and that's her kid. You're not taking them. There was a pause. Then slowly, the alien raised a hand. Blue energy crackled along its gauntlet. Do not interfere, human. Jacob didn't back down. His voice was calm but firm. You'll have to go through me first. The alien's eyes glowed brighter. So be it. The air erupted in light. The ground shook as the alien fired. Blue energy slamming into the barn wall. Wood splintered, the ground scorched. Jacob ducked behind a fence, heart racing. He fired back. Not that an old hunting rifle could do much, but the sound echoed across the field like thunder. The blast hit one alien in the shoulder, making it stumble. For a brief second, Jacob saw its surprise. He moved fast, running between hay bales and farm tools, forcing the aliens to split their attention. He wasn't trying to win, just to buy time. Below the barn, Lyra clutched Saren close as the ground shook above her. She heard the blasts, the shouts, the echo of Jacob's voice. Fear filled her heart. But so did something else. Hope. No one had ever fought for her like this. She pressed her hand against the pendant. Please, she whispered. Let me protect him too. Her pendant flickered, then glowed brighter. She focused, whispering in her native tongue. The light grew stronger, spreading through the cracks in the barn floor. Above ground, one of the aliens advanced toward the coop, scanning. Jacob saw it and shouted, Hey, over here! He threw a shovel to draw attention. The alien turned just as Jacob fired again. The shot hit a metal joint, causing sparks. The creature staggered, then roared in frustration. It raised its arm to fire, but before it could, a wave of blinding light exploded from the barn. The aliens stumbled back, their scanners flickering. Jacob shielded his eyes. The light pulsed again, forming a bright barrier that wrapped around the barn like a shield. Inside, Lyra stood, holding her pendant high. The crystal blazed like a small sun. Her eyes glowed gold as streams of energy poured from her hands, feeding the barrier. "Enough," she cried. The aliens recovered quickly. Their leader pointed at the barn. "Contain her!" Jacob saw them preparing another blast. He couldn't let that happen. He ran from cover, yelling at the top of his lungs, and fired both barrels. The shots hit the alien's chest, not enough to kill, but enough to draw its focus. The alien turned, raising its weapon toward Jacob. Lyra saw it, and screamed. The barrier burst outward in a shockwave of light, slamming into the aliens. The ship above wavered, its lights flickering. Jacob was thrown to the ground, his ears ringing. When the light faded, the field was silent again. The aliens were gone, either dead or retreating. The massive ship pulled back into the clouds, vanishing as suddenly as it had come. The rain began to fall once more, light and cold. Jacob slowly sat up, groaning. His ears buzzed, his chest hurt, and his hands were shaking. But he was alive. "Lyra?" he called weakly. The barn door creaked open and Lyra stepped out, her clothes torn, her pendant dim again. She carried Saren in her arms, his tiny face pressed against her shoulder. Jacob tried to stand, but stumbled. Lyra rushed forward and caught his arm. "You hurt?" He shook his head. "Just tired." He looked at the sky. "You did that, didn't you?" Lyra nodded weakly. "Used last energy. No more left." Jacob gave a faint smile. "Then you saved us both." She looked down, eyes full of emotion. "No, Jacob, you saved us. You stayed when you could run. You fight when you could hide." Jacob laughed softly, even through the pain. "Guess that's just human nature." Lyra's lips trembled. "You risk life for strangers. My world never understand this." He met her gaze. "Maybe one day they will." For a long moment, they just stood there in the rain. Two worlds, two beings united by one simple thing, the will to protect. Lyra looked at him then and said quietly, "Hunters go. But they return. They always return." Jacob nodded. "Then we'll be ready." That night, Jacob patched the holes in the barn while Lyra tended his cuts. Rusty lay near the fire, resting after the chaos. Saren slept peacefully, his small hands glowing faintly. Outside, the wind whispered through the fields. The storm had passed again, but this time the land felt different. Jacob knew he had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. He had defied something not of Earth, and though the fight had only begun, he felt no fear. Because now he understood something Lyra's people didn't, something deeply human. Courage isn't about power or weapons. It's about standing your ground when the whole universe tells you to back down. The morning sun rose over Jacob Miller's farm, casting long shadows across the fields. The storm from the night before had left the air crisp and fresh. Birds cautiously returned to the coop, and Rusty wagged his tail lazily, sensing that the immediate danger was gone. But Jacob knew better. The attack had only been a warning. Lyra's pursuers, the alien hunters, would not give up so easily. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had on Earth, and yet, for the first time, Jacob felt a strange confidence. He had seen Lyra's courage. He had seen the strength in her child, Saren, and now he understood something he had always believed. Humanity's greatest power was not weapons, or strength, or even numbers. It was the heart. Inside the barn, Lyra held Saren close. The little one's glowing hands were still dim, resting against her chest. Lyra's own skin shimmered faintly, but her energy had been drained by the previous night's effort. She had used nearly all of her remaining strength to create the barrier that saved Jacob and herself. "You saved us," she whispered softly. "You risk everything. Why?" Jacob looked at her, wiping the sweat and mud from his brow. "Because that's what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. It doesn't matter if they're human or not human. If someone needs help, we stand." Lyra's golden eyes widened slightly as if trying to understand the depth of his words. "You very different from what I expected." Jacob gave a small grin. "Guess you'd be surprised at humans." For a few moments they just sat in silence, listening to the wind whisper through the fields outside. But that peace would not last. By mid-morning, a strange vibration filled the air. The clouds gathered again, this time unnatural and sharp. Jacob stepped outside with Rusty at his heels. The sky split with a sudden flash of blue light and a massive shadow descended, larger than any ship he had ever seen. Lyra gasped. Hunters. Main fleet. Jacob's jaw clenched. All right. Time to see if stubborn humans can do more than just talk. The ship hovered above the farmhouse, its blue light scanning the ground. From its underbelly, multiple beams shot out, searching for the pendant's energy signature. Jacob grabbed his shotgun and ran to the barn. He needed a plan fast. Lyra, he called. We can't fight them head on. Too strong. But we can make sure they don't find you immediately. Lyra nodded, understanding. I can use last energy. Hide Saren. For now. Jacob helped her set Saren down in the hidden underground shelter beneath the barn. He secured the hatch, making sure it was invisible even to alien scanning technology. The little child looked up at Jacob with wide, trusting eyes. Be brave, little one, Jacob whispered. Mommy will protect you. And I will too. Saren nodded, a tiny glow flickering from his fingers. Jacob knew that the child had potential, strange, powerful abilities he didn't fully understand. But he also knew that Saren was still very young. Outside, the lead hunter descended first. It moved silently, almost like it was gliding on the wind. The other two followed, scanning every corner of the farm. Their glowing eyes searched for any sign of Lyra or Saren. Jacob took a deep breath. He didn't know if his plan would work, but he had to try. He ran to the old tractor shed, grabbing tools, planks, and barrels. He placed them strategically, creating obstacles that might slow the aliens down. He ran back toward the farmhouse, shouting and firing his shotgun sporadically. The aliens' attention shifted immediately. Over here, he yelled. Catch me if you can! The lead alien growled, a metallic alien sound. It raised its energy weapon, but Jacob ducked behind a haystack. Sparks flew when the weapon hit the metal roof, lighting up the night. Above him, Lyra's faint energy shimmered from the barn cracks. She had created a distraction, amplifying the sounds and lights from the farmhouse. Her plan was simple. Confuse the hunters long enough for Jacob to protect Saren and herself. Jacob gritted his teeth. Come on, you overgrown tin cans. You're not taking anyone today. The battle lasted for what felt like hours, though the night passed quickly. Jacob dodged, fired, and ran, using every bit of his knowledge of the farm to stay one step ahead. He lured the aliens toward open fields where the uneven ground slowed them down. He jumped ditches, climbed fences, and even rolled down small hills to escape their blasts. Meanwhile, Lyra focused her energy, keeping Saren safe below. Sparks flew from her pendant as she whispered in her native tongue, chanting a protective shield. The air in the barn hummed and glowed, small vibrations of alien energy mixing with the earthy smell of hay and wood. For a moment, Jacob allowed himself a small smile. The aliens were strong, fast, intelligent. But they had not counted on a human who refused to give up, even when the odds were impossible. Finally, after a long struggle, Jacob led the hunters to a trap he had prepared earlier. He had stacked barrels and tools, creating a maze of obstacles. The alien scanning beams bounced off the metal surfaces, causing confusion. One of the hunters tripped, its armor sparking as it hit the ground. The other two hesitated, unsure of the exact location of their target. Jacob didn't waste a second. He ran back to the barn. Lyra, it's time, he called. Lyra stepped outside carefully, holding her pendant high. Its faint glow now burned brighter than ever. Go now, Jacob, lead them away. He nodded. Stay safe. Then, with a burst of speed and courage only humans could summon in the face of impossible danger, Jacob ran across the field toward the nearest tree line. The aliens followed immediately, energy weapons firing. Sparks and flashes lit the night like lightning. Lyra and Saren stayed hidden beneath the barn. Saren peeked through the cracks, watching Jacob run with everything he had. His little hands glowed faintly as if trying to help. Lyra whispered, He is brave, like a true human. Jacob reached the tree line and used the dense forest to his advantage, ducking behind thick trunks and leaping over roots. Every step, every movement was calculated to draw the hunters further from the barn. Finally, with one last burst of strength, he jumped over a small creek, knocking one alien off balance. It tumbled into the water with a loud splash. The remaining hunter hesitated, then paused, scanning the area. Jacob ducked behind a fallen log, breathing heavily. He was exhausted, soaked to the bone, and his muscles ached, but he had succeeded. Above, Lyra activated her pendant one last time. A small focused pulse of energy rose through the barn, momentarily blinding the hunter's sensors. The remaining alien staggered, confused. Then, sensing the danger of being trapped, it retreated. The sky cleared again. Silence returned. Jacob stumbled back to the barn, collapsing near the trapdoor. Lyra rushed out, holding Saren. The little one's golden eyes shone with awe as he looked at Jacob. "You did it," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "You risk everything for us." Jacob gave a faint smile. "Someone had to." Saren reached out a small hand, glowing softly. Jacob touched it gently. "Good job, little one. You stayed safe." Lyra looked at Jacob with gratitude he could not measure. "Human, you protect even strangers. In my world, this is rare." "Very rare," Jacob shrugged. "I guess humans are a little different. We stand when it matters." Days passed and the farmhouse returned to quiet. The sun shone across the fields and the storm finally moved on. Jacob, Lyra, and Saren tended to minor repairs, cleaned up the coop, and restored the farm to its normal rhythm. But Jacob knew the peace was temporary. The hunters might return, or worse. Lyra could not stay hidden forever. But for now they had survived together, and in that survival a bond had formed that would last a lifetime. Before leaving, Lyra gave Jacob a small, glowing charm, a fragment of her pendant. "Keep this," she said, "a gift. And a reminder. Humans. Strong, brave, hopeful." Jacob accepted it carefully. "I'll keep it safe." Lyra smiled, her skin shimmering faintly in the sunlight. "Maybe one day, humans and Thalaran understand each other. Maybe one day." Together, Jacob nodded. "Maybe one day." Saren laughed softly, running to Rusty, who wagged his tail happily. Jacob watched them, his heart full. Somehow, he knew that the universe was bigger than he had imagined, but it had room for courage, kindness, and hope, qualities that only humans could truly share. That night, Jacob sat on the porch looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Lyra and Saren floated among the planets, traveling to a safer place. Somewhere out there, the hunters watched, plotting their return, but for now humanity had stood firm. A farmer had protected a mother and her child from the stars, and in that act, something extraordinary had happened. A human's courage had become a beacon, showing that even against impossible odds, one person could make a difference. Jacob smiled softly. Rusty nudged his hand. "We did good, boy," he whispered. "We did good." Above, the stars shone brightly, and for the first time, Jacob felt a connection to the universe that went beyond Earth. Somewhere, Lyra's people might remember him. Somewhere, the stars themselves might recognize the heart of a human who refused to back down. And that was enough.